Om Namah Shivaya. My name is Marin Vayu, and my mission on this planet is to bring back some lost wisdom of the five elements of nature: fire, water, air, earth, and the fifth element, space. But I like it to call it spirit because it's the same. In some tradition, they call it spirit, the great spirit, or even the life itself, because it is the source of everything. Space is everywhere and inside everything, even in each of those four elements. So these five elements are the pillars of nature, and many ancient traditions figure out this, or it came from one tradition and then it spread because it's so beautiful. This philosophical concept is so beautiful that everybody embrace it. And really, I made a video about this, that how every culture, every ancient traditions are based, their knowledge is based on this concept of the five elements of nature. Sometimes four, they talk only about four, but only because they keep the fifth one secretly, or in some cases, they lost the knowledge, the source, but mostly they keep it secretly, like in alchemy, for example. Yeah. So it is the most famous philosophical, spiritual, esoteric knowledge, philosophical topic in the history of humanity. Even today, is the most famous. Every culture is based, like Chinese, all the Chinese tradition, like all the Indian traditions, chakras, yoga, everything. Vastu, Ayurveda, then alchemy from Egypt, then astrology, then paganism, the rituals in paganism, in shamanic tradition. They all talk, they all refer. The Greek, ancient Greek philosophers, they all talked about, in the first place, about the five elements of nature. They all start from that point. They base their knowledge on this concept. So, because it is beautiful, it is nature. So they wanted to understand what is nature made from. But now you would ask, maybe, what about, is this scientifically proved? Is it really nature based on those five elements? Well, first of all, the scientists start to realize that there are other elements inside water, for example, inside earth, so that these are not the elementary matter that exists. There is other elements. So they discover more than 100 elements. But then they group them into categories. They call them state of matter: solid, liquid, gas, plasma. And those are, again, those categories have characteristics of the ancient tradition of the five elements of nature, the four of them. But then recently, just maybe in the last century, it started to be again popular into scientific, let's say, discussion in physics, that there is this fifth element called field, called quantum field in their own terminology. And this actually, it's now more and more present. It's everybody's talking about this, because this is like, let's say, something that unite the whole universe into one thing. Because if the space is not empty, it is something, then everything is one, actually. Everything is just one vibration, vibrating in different kind of frequencies, like, let's say, like this. So ancient people knew this, they discovered this because they learned it from nature. They were extracting wisdom from nature. For example, our body has the shape of number 5. So, two legs, two arms, and one head. You might think, well, this doesn't say anything. But then again, on each of these corners, let's say 5 corners, 5 extremities, on each of them there is again symbol number 5, 5 toes on legs, 5 fingers on each arms, and then they pointing to something 5 on the head. And guess what? There are 5 senses on our head, and these 5 senses are directly connected to the 5 elements of nature, to the source of energy. This is one way how maybe ancient people discover the five elements of nature. So which are those five elements of nature that are source of energies? Fire, water, air, earth, and the space. How they figure out this? Because nature, it's like a living being, it's alive, except of animals and trees, which grow and reproduce, but the elements of nature, the fire, water, air, and earth, are also moving, so they have some characteristics like they are alive, like they are great spirits of nature. They don't reproduce, they don't need food, they don't grow or die, but they behave like they are living being because first of all they gave us so much. They gave us food, they gave us oxygen, they gave us water for drink. We need the light that we see. We need those elements of nature to live, but also they can behave like gods because they can people in ancient time thought that they were gods of nature because they could show their power by sending earthquakes, tsunamis, wildfires, strong winds, volcanoes, storms. Actually, storm, it's a natural phenomena that contains all the elements. It's like the fifth element, space, which contains all the elements. Because in storm you have winds, of course, it can be rain, it can be dust brought by wind, thunder, like a fire. So all the four elements can be in the storm that is coming from above. And in the same way, the volcano, when it erupts, it releases all the elements in air. So it's like, and it's coming from down. So that means that the fifth element, the source of the fifth element, can be above and below. So this is one way how the ancient mystics figure out which are the five elements of nature. And then you might heard about Chinese version. They have metal and wood as two elements. They don't have air and they don't have space, which is very strange. But they're trying to explain these differently. But for me, it doesn't count. For me, or they made a mistake, or it's a tradition that developed by its own and make their own conclusions. But for me, this is not the source of energy. These are not nature. These are not gods. Cannot be a god of metal. So they need to correct this. Sorry, Chinese, but you need to correct your. It's just names. The characteristics are the same. And then what? Now that we have all these elements of nature, that now that we have a theory, what is the essence of nature? What this have to do with esoteric teachings, with us? Well, ancient mystics discovered that we are made from the same thing like nature. So we are made also from those elements. And this doesn't mean not just our body, but that means that also our character is made from the same elements of nature. Because if we observe people, we can see that sometimes they show characteristics like the elements of nature. Like somebody can be very acting like fire, very dynamic, very aggressive. Somebody can be soft like water, can cry. Somebody can be like a wind going around, can not stay in the. Somebody can be very static, passive like earth. So there are these are few very, very simple characteristics of the elements of nature just to understand. So somebody realized that we have those characteristics. And later they elaborate this and they went deeper into wisdom, into insights. They figure out that thoughts, words, feelings, and also physical deeds, behavior, they all are made, they all belong to the elements of nature. In a sense that we can say that every element likes to think in a certain way, likes to do certain things, like to speak in a certain way or about some topics. It likes to do certain things, feel in a different way. So every element different. And to be even more interesting, is that fire and water are kind of opposite. What fire likes, water doesn't like. The characteristic of air and earth are completely opposite. You know, air is above, earth is fixed below. So this is why we can have conflict in life, because if we are not balanced, if we develop only one element in our thoughts or in our words or in our feelings or in deeds or in all of it, if we feed one element too much, it becomes stronger, it becomes dominant, and then disbalance. This is disbalance, and balance is the most important law of nature. So if we create disbalance, is if we are made of disbalance, then we will not have easy life. Because if you want to go somewhere, if you want to walk, you need to have balance on left and right leg. You create small disbalance, but it's still a perfect balance. So this is the whole point. To understand the element ourselves, one way is to understand the nature around us. It's a mirror. So once we figure out the characteristics of nature around us, we can discover it in our character by observing our thoughts, words, feelings, and deeds. And once we did this, we can start to correct it. And this is the main point of why I'm doing this, why I'm sharing this wisdom, because it can be used in practical reason. Like to me, when I discovered this, I already been on a spiritual journey for 10 years before that. And I thought that I was very balanced. But when I discovered the concept of the 5 elements of nature, I realized that I am in disbalance. And then I start to correct this, and my life improved so much. Before that, I was thinking, oh, it's my karma because, certain things are not very good in my life. But I thought, okay, nobody has a perfect life. But actually, we have a potential in us of all the 5 elements. Or let's say like this, every element has certain qualities. So if we have that element developed, because the potential is definitely there, because we are made of it, but it's just if we don't use a certain element, it becomes weak. But if we develop all the elements, if we feed all the elements, if we keep the balance, then we will have all the qualities of each of those 5 elements. And once you have all the qualities of those elements, your life will be much easier, much beautiful. You will have more peace, more joy, more power, more freedom, and more magic in your life. So that is the whole wisdom, in short, of these 5 elements. So I made 5 videos, one for each element. You can find them below this video, and you can listen to them. I mean, I can talk about one element for many hours, but to make it short, I wrote down the most important characteristics of each element, and then I was reading it. So those videos, I'm talking to the camera, to you, but I'm reading, so you don't need to even watch me, you can just listen. Actually, it's even better if you just listen, you don't watch to the screen. And you listen and try to discover those characteristics in your life, in your character. And then in the end, you will maybe figure out that, oh, some elements maybe you're missing, or some you have too strong. Too strong is also not good. That is also a disbalance. Like me, I discovered that 2 of my elements were very, very strong, too strong, and 2 were completely missing. That is a big disbalance. So maybe you discover that, and maybe you will know what you need to do. I also have programs, online programs with 5 weeks, even 5 months program, where we work on each element for a period of time, like 1 week for each element or 1 month for each element, and then we work on it to balance ourselves. Because the program, and the group, the support of the group, it's very, very, how to say, I wouldn't say important, but it's much, much easier, and and the inspiration that you have, and the continuity that you have, discipline when you are in the group. So if you want these programs, You can find in the end the links below. But only with these 5 lectures plus conclusion, you will already have an idea if there is a disbalance in your character. And if you don't, if you think, okay, I have all the elements, here I have more this one, here I have more that one, sometimes I use more this one, sometimes you, maybe you have a good balance. But you can also learn how to use the wisdom of those elements in a certain occasions. You will learn how, where, and when to use each element. And then you can use this wisdom to improve your life, because there is always a room to improvement. And there are many concepts for self-improving, many concepts that people develop. But the 5 elements concept is definitely the most simple, the most beautiful. It's a concept, it's the language of nature. And even in psychology, the modern psychology, until a few hundred years ago, since ancient Greece, people were using this concept of the 4 temperaments: choleric, sanguinic, melancholic, phlegmatic. And these were created from the concept of the 4 elements that Empédocle and Aristotle presented. So in psychology, psychologists use that concept until recently. And why they start to change it, now they don't use this anymore, because many psychologists develop their own concepts, because I think it's mostly because they didn't want to be connected with astrologers, because the astrology is using the concept of the 4 elements of nature. So probably they want to be separated from that, to be more scientific oriented. So they created a lot of other concepts, but I think they missed the most simple, the most beautiful, the most logical, the most powerful concept. And in time, there are fragments of this concept that they were lost. Like you can find in every tradition pieces of puzzles, like I did. But if you miss some important, you might even create some mistakes according to that during time. And this, I think, happened in many cases. I will talk about that in other videos. And because of that, maybe some of the things doesn't sound rational, or they don't sound logical. But in the original version, there was a lot of logic in everything. And you can see this logic because you have and eyes to observe the elements of nature. You can observe by yourself. It's a language that you will understand. And if you ask me, okay, which from all the tradition, which is my base? Do I because the elements you can find in chakras, in Buddhism, in a lot of things, alchemy, astrology, so Ayurveda. So which is my base? Because they all vary a little bit. So my luck was that I discovered this concept I start to channelize it, I start to download it without knowing about them. I heard about them, of course, some things, but not much. And this was my luck, because then I start to download it from scratch. And then I start to research, to compare what I just channeled in the matter of few weeks. This was very intense period, but also, of course, this was 15 years ago. I'm still downloading sometimes something. And then I start to research the topic. I start to see which is the closest to what I download from the Akashic records, from the space, from the 5th element. And then I realized that all the esoteric teachings has a piece of puzzle, and somehow I was lucky not to be influenced by only one. So in my teachings you will find of each one of them you will find something, but it is all very logically connected. It gives it is not, I'm not going into the things that cannot be explained. I'm mostly focused on psychology. I'm not going to esotericism, like like this color present this or this number present this element, or this crystal present this, or this chakra is this. No, I'm not touching those esoteric teachings. I've been studying them for 20 years. Of course, I've been on this spiritual journey. But no, from my perspective, it's just from the psychological point of view, from the logical point of view, from the beauty that it is in nature, that it's very simple. This language of nature, it's actually very, very simple. So I hope you will enjoy in these 5 lectures. And yeah, I will make one conclusion as well in the end. And I hope to see you in some of the programs as well. Om Namah Shivaya.